Order. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
With pleasure, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Hedges.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Lorraine.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Newsom. Here. Mayor Diaz-Nash.
Here. We are excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, please complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the city clerk. If participating remotely, please raise your hand in Zoom and you will be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, please press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close public comment for each specific item. So we will begin tonight's special meeting with a closed session, item number 1, conference with labor negotiators. Before we convene to close session, City Clerk, do we have any slips to speak on item 1?
Yes, Madam Mayor. So far, I've received 4 requests to speak slip on this item. Just verifying that we don't have any other requests to speak. We have 1 more, so that's a total of 5. So that'll be 3 minutes per
3
speaker.
minutes, yeah.
Okay. So we will go in order. So the first 3 speakers, and if I call your name, if you could please line up along to my right here, that would be greatly appreciated. Our first speaker will be Eric, followed by Leon Bowles and Raul Perez.
Thank you, Mayor, fellow council members, and assorted fellow city employees. That none of you ever worked here the last time I spoke in front of any of this group before, so even most of the council is different at this point. But my name is Eric Morkvey. I've worked for Public Works. Now I'm going into my 25th year here shortly. I started off as a per diem in the late 90s and am currently worked my way up to lead worker and acting supervisor in environmental services and sewer division. I was a previous chapter chair of this particular unit, steward, a member of 4 separate negotiating teams back in the early 2000s, assisted SEIU coordination for phone banks with the city on behalf of Measure L and Measure M, went knocking door to door, house to house. Back in the dot-com bust, we were the very first group in 2009, 2010 to come to the concession table with the city. And it only took us 30 minutes, 1 meeting, and we offered up the first of the concessions that started over the span of approximately 4 years during that time. The group has asked me to speak on a statement of purpose. We, the employees of the City of San Mateo, represented by 521, do hereby declare our statement of purpose in the now ongoing negotiations. Given the challenging circumstances that have confronted the city and its employees over the past 4 years with COVID, inflation, housing crisis, and economic uncertainties, we believe that this is the year negotiation in which the city should make an extra effort to help its employees after the years of sacrifice that your frontline workers have made. It is our goal to provide every city worker with the ability to live within the city that they work, have the income to support a family, and have financial security in the present and future. To these ends, we feel that a significant increase in salary and benefits is due for the following reasons. 1, in 2020, the world confronted a crisis unheard of in our modern times. COVID created a scenario in which going to work put people's lives at risk. Many employees of the city could work from home and manage to mitigate the risk to themselves and their families. However, many of the employees within the city were considered essential and went out on the front lines risking everything to keep the city functional. Nearly everyone represented by the SEIU was considered an essential worker, and they went to work each day, regardless of the risks, knowing that it could cost them their lives. These brave essential workers have been praised and lauded for their sacrifice. While that recognition is appreciated, it does not put food on the table. And I wish to pause for just a second to see if I can get my 3 minutes extended to 5. I've got just a little bit more to go. Is that possible?
I'm sorry, it's not.
I'll hand this off to you.
I'm not going to take that much time. You can have mine.
Unfortunately, we don't allow for deferring of time.
Where we are?
Start with number 2.
Number 2, hi, my name is Leon. I appreciate your attention in this, and thank you again for hearing us all out. I have been with the city for 23 years, and I am at the treatment plant, and we are 24/7, 7 days a week, nights, weekends. We'll leave the lights on if you want to come see us. All right. In the previous contract negotiations, there was a feeling of panic that as the city shut down its bars and restaurants, tax revenue would decline and the city would find itself in a financial crisis. It was presented during the negotiations to be the union and its members that the COVID crisis was a threat to the city. And on that note, we are still taking COVID samples today, once, twice a week. It's a night shift thing. I don't quite remember. Anyway, the city made the sacrifice, the financial crisis that was feared never materialized, and now the city has a rainy day fund. With over $60 million in it, the city employees sacrificed during the COVID crisis are a large part of the reasons that fund exists. We would request that the city respect the sacrifices and rewards their loyal workers with the compensation they have been denied and which they have earned. Turnover in the city is a consistent issue. Over the past year, the wastewater treatment plant and the courtyard have had 10 plus employees resign and take positions at other agencies for a significant increase in salary and reduction in responsibility. 3 of the 5 employees from the wastewater treatment plant still on probation. They took new positions with an average salary increase of 20%. 5 plant employees, 3 operators, and 2 mechanics, 2 courtyard sewer employees, 3 traffic workers. The constant turnover is putting operational needs of the city infrastructure at risk, lacking experienced people, and putting our mission at risk, and with other cities, districts in the area paying significantly more, we will never be able to compete, and we will lose our best employees, our best employees. We are effectively a training city, taking in unexperienced people and expanding resources to train them, giving them the experience and the tools they need to be successful, and they leave us for other organizations that more fairly compensate them. This, among other things, create safety concerns as qualified and experienced operators, mechanics, maintenance workers, traffic, and safety techs are not around to relay vital information to can you help me out with this word?
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Raul Perez.
Good evening to everybody. My name is Raul Perez. I currently live in San Bruno, resident, yet worker here for 2.5 years now. And I'm very happy to be here in San Mateo. Along with my coworker said, I'd be happy to retain this job along with many of my coworkers here that would like to stay.
Start right there with this, among other things.
This, among other things, creates safety concerns as qualified and experienced operators, mechanics, maintenance workers, traffic, and safety techs are not around to relay vital information to perpetual new corp and inexperienced people. It is time for the city to recognize its deficiency and started using the salary comparison to ensure that San Mateo is the best paid city, not the most middling city. The city is finishing up construction a $500 million wastewater treatment facility. This facility will have the largest MBR array in the state of California. This new facility will be one of the most technologically advanced facilities of its kind. Competent, experienced, and well-trained people will be necessary for this plant to function. If the city insists on keeping its wages low, it will continue to have an overworked staff trying to run an advanced facility with a constant corp of inexperienced operators and mechanics cycling in and out. This will create a situation where costly mistakes will be common, safety issues will be abundant, and morale will be at a constant low. We believe it is the city's best interest to reconsider its past practices and consider paying greater than the median when compared to other facilities. This will address many of the concerns we have with the turnover and the problems of high turnover that is currently causing to our workforce. Employees financed by the general fund in traffic safety, and facility maintenance have been grossly understaffed. In the early 2000s, facilities had 11 employees. Over a decade, this was whittled down to 3 employees. For personal safety in the field, the needs of our fellow employees throughout the city, you need to start listening to the frontline employees, ensure the areas with the personnel, and pay people to stay.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Steve, followed by Rico, and Rico will be our last speaker.
Thank you. Hi there, Council. My name is Steve. I'm a representative, organizer for our folks for the city of San Mateo. I just want to just highlight the work that they do and the essential work that they do. Without our folks, none of we wouldn't be able to have a city that's running. Folks can get to one place to the next because we have the folks sitting back here. You turn the faucet on, you get clean water because of the folks back here. Without our folks doing the work that they do, it's going to be difficult for the police, the fire, any other services to happen. And as you all know, they are essential workers. Let's make sure that we value their work, make sure we invest in the services that they provide, and making sure that we can keep them here. The established practices, the longevity, all of the established history that they bring and they carry. Let's make sure we value to create a better city. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker will be Rico. I apologize if I got your name wrong.
Rico, yeah, that's fine. You can call me Rico as well. Let me know when you're ready. Okay, sorry. Okay. Well, my name is Rigoberto. My full name, everybody calls me Rigo. You can call me Rico. Like I say, I always make the joke with everybody. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm not a good speaker, but I just want to let you guys know that I'm here with all my friends over here in the back. I'm the irrigation specialist for the city of San Mateo, so I do the baffles for the police department, for the fire department, for the libraries everywhere, and we are only 2 guys on that position, so you can imagine. We got more than 300 baffles a year. Plus, I need to run the water in every single part, every single median, and that's not something simple. All I wanted to say is I want to be here with my guys to support all those guys right here. I respect them as me, and to be honest with you, you guys had invest so many $1 million around the city, like the new water treatment plant. You guys have spent more than $1 billion, and these guys know how to run all the equipment over there. If you guys lose one of these guys, you're probably going to lose more money if something goes wrong with the new equipment that you guys are putting there. We got this other new project over there on Delaware, Delaware in Saratoga, that it costs more than $50 million. And the same thing is going to happen there because we got the pond guys over here that are checking the ponds every single day on the streets. It's like me, I'm checking, like I said, the water for all the, if something goes wrong on the sprinkler system on the main library, we're going to lose a lot of books and all that millions of dollars on that, and I'm the one doing that. And I just want to let you guys know that we are here only to ask you guys to help us, to be fair with us, because we all got families, kids to support, and I got my kids, and I'm happy to be here working with you guys, but I'm not afraid to lose this job. If something offers me more than here, I'm going to leave. I used to work on 2000 for Caltrain. The only reason that I didn't continue on tracks is because they offered me to move to another state. So I don't want to be, traveling every single time and leave my kids up here at home. I'd rather be with my family, where I can be close to them. But please be in our shoes. How many guys of you are being over there or the water treatment plant? I also test the baffles for those guys. Just to smell what they smell every single day is not fun. And they know. Sorry guys, but it's the truth. And every time I've been digging over there on the streets, sometimes we have hit power, electricity, and you know what happened with water and fire. But I think that these guys are helping me a lot, and we are a team, and we are all together, and just be fair with us. We are not asking for $1 million or $500,000. Just be fair with us. I think that's all I need to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Madam Mayor, that concludes public comment.
And there are no virtual comments.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Well, then I will close the public comment period. and we will adjourn the meeting for the moment and reconvene in closed session in Conference Room C. But thank you all very much for being here tonight. Thank you for letting us hear what you think and what you feel. And thank you very much for your service, all of you. Thank you.
of the interrelationship. Our implementation plans are focused around the actions in both documents, as the goals are that overarching desired result, and then the policy is an ongoing activity that guides decision making, and if there's an actionable part of it, it's then reflected in an action, which is then what's outlined in more detail in both plans. Starting with our general plan implementation plan, I'm just giving you an overview of kind of what each of the columns mean. This is a 20-year plan, and so obviously a lot of these actions require more specific work and evaluation to understand exactly what it will take to get them done. And so this is kind of a high-level plan to give everyone an idea. We've got a number of actions in here, and so this is the key that outlines, are these reoccurring actions, just routine, part of a department's work plan, in progress, and we've got a number of those, or then kind of the 3 tiers of when we'll get to them, because obviously given staff time and resources, available resources, not all of them can be embarked upon at once. So for our general plan, there are 8 elements, 7 of which are included in the implementation plan. The housing element is administered separately because this is an 8-year document and has different legal requirements. So within the 7 elements covered in the general plan's implementation plan, we have a total of 56 goals. They are supported by 363 policies and 240 actions. It's those 240 actions that are reflected in the implementation plan. And with many of them, you can see a cross-reference to their associated policies, because generally an action will be implementing a piece or a whole of a policy that's in the document. So looking at this year, we do have a number of initiatives that are already underway or about to be underway that support or helps implement various actions. Both of our Complete Streets planning efforts are covered. The recent adoption of our local roadway safety plan supports the planning for a Vision Zero plan. As well as a number of activities, or moving forward, we do anticipate commencement of our climate change adaptation plan later this year, and part of that is contingent on when we get word back on our grant application and if we have additional money to support that effort. And then also, we are moving forward with our citywide TDM ordinance, as well as pedestrian mall improvements on B Street. Looking forward to 2025, the big initiative there will be the comprehensive zoning code and zoning map updates. And this is really the core piece that helps to implement the general plan, primarily around the land use element, but really supporting all of the elements with the zoning code piece. We also do have a couple other high-profile initiatives, our comprehensive communication strategy, updates to our traffic calming and roadway classifications. And then we do anticipate in 2026 updating our area plans and specific plans, starting with our downtown area plan. The other point that's worth noting is the alignment between general plan actions and this year's council priorities. And so these council priorities will officially get underway in July 1. And so as you can see, 6 of the 9 do include 1 or more actions that help implement them. So this is something there where you can see significant alignment, and we do imagine moving forward that the implementation plan will be an important piece of information for council to consider each year when you do your Blue Skies goal setting and look at what we want to prioritize in the coming year. Moving over to the housing element, as was noted, the housing element has different legal requirements, and it operates on an 8-year housing cycle. Within the housing element, we have 5 goals supported by 53 policies and 127 implementation actions. And then you can kind of see how these implementation actions spread by goal. Clearly, the 2 biggest pieces here are related to housing production and affirmatively furthering fair housing. So looking a bit more closely at how these housing element actions function, we have 24 that are identified as routine or ongoing. So these are activities that require some work initially to kind of get rolling, setting up the framework, and then generally require annual activity to maintain compliance. And so you can see here, most notably, it's our annual progress report where we compile data on the past year's activities and then submit that to the state. And then it's other things that maybe aren't annual but ongoing, such as maintaining and updating information, ongoing coordination with our partners in different jurisdictions, various types of outreach and engagement, and then other internal processes for administering things like our BMR units and those agreements. Then we move into the specific actions. And so these are actions that have a year identified. And so we do have an obligation under our housing element to start and or complete that action in the year that's identified. So starting in 2023, which was the first year of our housing cycle, our primary focus was moving through and getting a housing element that could be certified by the state, but we did have 20 actions that needed to be accomplished in 2023. We were able to accomplish 16 of those 20 actions, notably adoption of our objective design standards and increasing the administrative approval threshold for housing projects. We did also allocate funding to support a transitional housing project. And we facilitated discussions about Measure Y within the general plan update process. And then those 4 actions, which were relatively minor, we are working to get completed in this calendar year. For 2024, the big accomplishment to date was adoption of our housing element. And so then that leaves us a little over 6 months to implement or get started on 34 implementation actions. So you can see we do have a long list of meaningful priorities that we're going to get started on here. It's likely not all of these will get completed this year, but the key is getting started, beginning the work, and then continuing into 2025 to complete that work that was not able to get done this year. Then in 2025, in addition to wrapping up remaining work from 2024's actions, we'll have 32 new actions to get started. And so you can see there's a number of ongoing important ones here. And this is really a product of, as part of our discussion with the state, there was a requirement that many of our actions and timelines be moved to the front end. So we had initially started with one that balanced work throughout the 8 years, and over the course of the back and forth with the state, many of those timelines moved up. So of that 127 number, more than 50% need to get started, actually probably more than 60% in the first 3 years. So obviously the goal is getting started so then it can have an effect on this housing cycle. But that does also highlight that we do need the full 8 years to implement all 127 of those actions, because there's a lot of work involved and resources. And so that comes back to the study session before you this evening, which is, do you have any questions on the implementation actions in either the general plan or the housing element, or direction on changes to the prioritizations to either plan?
Thank you very much. Let me now open up public comment. Do we have any requests for comment?
Yes, if you wish to speak on this is item number 2 for the special meeting. Please raise your hand if you're participating via Zoom, or provide a yellow request to speak slip if you are in person. I'll give you just a couple more seconds to do so. Madam Mayor, it looks like we just have one request to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll set the timer at 3 minutes. And our first and only speaker in this item will be Kareem Saraf. Kareem, please unmute your mic.
Greetings. In implementing and in achieving the goals set forth in the City of San Mateo's housing element, I urge the City Council to adopt AB 1033 into the city's municipal code. AB 1033 provides another powerful tool to help municipalities accomplish their housing element goals for the next 8 years by allowing the subdivision and sale of accessory dwelling units on residential lots. AB 1033 aims to expand housing units inventory and home ownership opportunities. It turns renters into homeowners and provides much needed affordable housing. AB 1033 keeps our children, caregivers, teachers, nurses, first responders, service providers, and essential workers living near their places of work and oftentimes in the communities where they grew up. While states like Oregon and Texas have seen success with ADU sales of this kind, AB 1033 leaves this decision to local governments in California. Thus, the city council must opt in to this new law, allowing the city to remove previous state law prohibitions against mapping and selling a single-family home and its ADU. It is up to the city council to amend the municipal codes to allow these entry-level home ownership opportunities. Please adopt AB 1033.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That concludes public comment.
All right, thank you, and thank you to the speaker. I am now going to close public comment and bring it back to the council for questions and comments. And just as a reminder, we went through a very productive code of conduct conversation just last week. So let's all try and be efficient. We don't all have to ask questions, and when we want to say something, let's be as concise as possible. So who would like to start us off? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate the commentary from Mr. Saraf, and I think it's a valid question. I also am very excited about AB 1033, and I'm interested to hear from Director Dahl. Where in our plan have we embedded the need and the opportunity to integrate, forthcoming and new state laws that will help streamline, housing production and particularly that those opportunities for our, for our first home buyers and middle income folks.
So within the housing elements implementation plan, that's H1.4, we do have an action that speaks to amending the city's ADU ordinance to align with current state laws and resolve any inconsistencies as identified by the state. This AB 1033 is an opt-in law, so this is not a specific priority within our implementation plan at this point, but if there's direction provided by council, we could look at how that could be folded in.
I'm interested in this one-off, but I think I'm more interested in sort of a broader policy that looks across all of the opt-in pro-housing legislation and creates a routine mechanism for the council to evaluate those opportunities. Would it be best served in, for example, the legislative committee? Would it be, where does this sit? In terms of the organizational process to look at the state legislation opportunities that are opt-in.
So there's two different things going on here. So there's the implementation once state law is passed and the implementation. That's what this 1033 would be, having that policy discussion, whether or not the city wanted to opt in. It's not mandated, it's an opt-in. Regarding your original question, that's more of having the legislative committee really having the city council having a legislative platform or the city having a legislative platform and how you want to advocate and help shape state law basically before, and throughout the state legislative process annually. That's a different.
Totally, it is two separate things. I guess what I'm saying is we don't currently have a subcommittee per se established to look at new forthcoming state laws and how to integrate them, how to prioritize them when they are not forced upon us, but actually, an opportunity that we can and potentially should be considering.
So there is a subcommittee. It's the legislative subcommittee made up of the mayor and the deputy mayor. Now, historically, has the city acted upon it? I've only been here 10 months, but during my time, from what I've heard from I haven't seen an active, proactive, legislative advocacy platform on behalf of the city. That's a whole separate item if the council wanted to wade into those waters and, start getting involved at the state level of future policies.
I guess we're talking about two different things. One is the advocacy, right? Right. That's the scope of the current committee.
That's correct.
Right. So what I'm asking about is there
implementation.
Right. Is there a home? Is there a role or a dedicated space for council to routinely consider new housing law opportunities that are opt-in?
So you're happy to jump in there, but what?
I think like CDD has occasionally
is
said
the
like
staff?
these are new, these
What?
are new laws.
What happens is there's a new state law. So basically, the planners, they all get together with 21 elements. They'll go through all the state laws. Also, just throughout the League of California Cities, they'll go through all the new housing laws, right? Now, there are, there's the mandates typically, but then there's also the ones where you might have the ability as a council to make local policy. I don't know if you want to add into that.
Well, I would just say that I don't think we've done it consistently year after year while I've been here, but I know that on some years we have brought study sessions with legislative updates to either the Planning Commission or the City Council, and it's been usually like a housing, like a grouping of new bills. And so I think that might be something, and I would actually defer that maybe to Prasanna, because I think we have done that at the Planning Commission and at the City Council separately, but not regularly.
Right, so occasionally there are more comprehensive updates on legislation. For example, I think in 2017, there was a large number of housing bills passed, and that trend has kind of continued. We have not done sort of comprehensive legislative updates every year. It's more on a based on need, based on the legislation that's passed. But that's what we've done to date.
Yes, and I think that, my experience has been that it's reactive, and I think that there potentially is an opportunity for us to create a more sort of structured process for us to look at not just the required updates, but the areas where we can potentially opt into new legislation that would strengthen our housing production. And so, I would be interested if there's an appetite from the council to add if there's a place that you could recommend Director Dahl, add an action item that would say, on a regular cadence, on an annual basis, we'll bring forward a study session of new state legislation.
So I would say that how the assistant city manager was describing what you've done in past action, that's kind of how most cities do typically. So once the state law is passed, then usually everyone has to decipher what the state law is, and all the attorneys get involved, and they all huddle together and trying to figure out exactly what is the implementation. And what will happen is that typically at that point, the expectation would be, I would expect that we'd have some type of study session for the council as a whole to discuss what what are the possibilities for implementation.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. In my view, I think that there probably are opportunities that we should be considering and dedicating space to consider. And I've, as a homeowner, I've actually, I was made aware of AB 1033, not to focus this conversation solely on this one, piece of legislation, but when I, as a constituent, asked the staff, where are we with AB 1033? It was, well, the council hasn't acted on it, right? So there was nothing to do. There's no go forward there. And then, putting on my policy hat and the organizational process hat, it's, the question remains, how do we better systematize these, the consideration of these opportunities? Is that worthy of us dedicating an action item that we say at a regular cadence we want to do this? And, and maybe we're folding in a process that we've already committed to, and we're just having a kind of a more streamlined way of accountability to that schedule, right? Where we bring forward what 21 Elements is saying, and we look at what the where the movement is.
So that's totally fine. That's kind of what I was describing with a study, annual study session with the new state law of the housing items that are coming forward. But I'd love to hear, from the rest of this council of, how you'd like to approach it.
Yeah, so essentially we don't have to date an annual study session. What I'm proposing is, as an additional action item, creating a new action that would say, we want to have a scheduled annual study session.
Who would like? Councilmember Lorraine.
Thank you, through the mayor. I would support this idea that Councilmember Lee is bringing. I think what I've heard from staff and Councilwoman Lee is in the past we've had sessions kind of as needed to inform Planning Commission and Council about new legislation related to housing that we know we need to implement or maybe coming up and we are looking at. And I think I would agree with Councilmember Lee that it might, because this council and city is concerned about reducing our housing crisis gap, increasing affordable housing where possible, it would be good to consider making a habit of doing that and perhaps baking in on top of that a look at other housing legislation that may be opt-in, such as AB 1033, so that as we're talking about how we might need to implement certain housing law, we could see other optional laws that we could also add in furtherance of increasing housing.
So just to jump in real quick, I totally hear where you guys are at, but you also do have within the council rules and guidelines in Chapter 11 under legislative, pending legislation for consideration by the legislative committee can be submitted to the committee by a council member, city manager, or by a commission staff liaison. If a majority of the commission voted in favor of submission to the legislative committee. So it already can be brought up by you guys as an individual to look further at a legislative committee. That's separate and apart from what we're talking about, having an annual study session, most likely in February, to go over just the state housing laws and saying, hey, what do you guys want to do, council, any interest in this? And then we'd have to tell you exactly what that would mean in terms of resource and capacity.
Councilmember Hedges, you wanted to speak.
I think it's a good idea to have an annual update on the state legislation, especially with housing, but maybe other laws as well that have been passed that may affect the city. We should all be updated on that because I'm going to ask the major question right now. I cannot remember what AB 1033 is for sure. I think it's the condoing of.
It's the ADU. So ADU, it's creating separate subdivided lots or separate parcels.
Yeah, it's condoing
for those.
an ADU. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that's what it was.
So
that brings some problems with it. I hope we'll have something if people want to do it here that can inform them on the pitfalls too. If we implement it.
Councilmember or Deputy Mayor.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good thing that we should be talking about, at least on a yearly basis. I think most of the time, the laws are usually mandates from the state, not opt-in. I would love to have, periodic, information from you guys saying, hey, this came up, this is a new opt-in policy. And then we could do ad hoc, or we could just do once a year or twice a year scheduled study session.
So here's a suggestion. If the council has an appetite to get regular updates of state laws and everything that's going on, typically what cities will do, like Belmont, Foster City, Redwood City, they have a legislative consultant basically that works up in Sacramento and will provide, they also do grant writing basically. It's kind of a combination. And I know that we're looking at grant writing services, but they can provide the full suite and also provide regular reports and then also provide updates to the council on all the housing updates that come at the same time. If you guys are interested in that, I'm happy to look into that further and do an RFP.
I think
It's just information. It's just for information.
information, I guess I would add to the discussion we've had. All the housing laws don't come at the same time. They have different reasons for being, different requirements, and I think it would be very difficult to have all of them in one session. So I prefer more of an ad hoc. I think if there's an information source that would improve our discussion, and we could say, hey, it looks like there are 2 or 3 that are similar, so we could have a study session about these, and that's fine, but just having ad hoc housing. And then on the other hand, you brought up other topics. I would want to keep it very, very focused, or we're going to be doing nothing but studying what's going on in Sacramento. And I don't think that's the best use of our time. So that would be my comment.
Okay, so thank you for entertaining that line of questioning. My other line of questioning is to better understand, if you will, Director Dahl, if you don't mind educating us and the community on what specific action items, the HCD is actually requiring of us to strengthen AB 1482.
So with AB 1482, this is related to tenant protections. We have our primary goal is, our policy is policy H 3.4, which is titled Expanding Tenant Protections. And so in there, it's looking at extending provisions. So it does, A would be extending provisions to require tenant relocation payments for no-fault evictions for those with a tenure of less than 1 year. And we are looking at getting that effort started this year. We also do have one that looks at making recommendations to council for establishing tenant protection policies. This one has a 2026 timeline, but with the other work that we're doing, we would probably bundle this all together, because I think the key piece is, as we've been going through this process and adjusting in response to HCD, we are now doing a little right sizing where some timelines don't align where they did earlier on. And so as our team looks at getting all of this work done, we are going to bundle. So we don't have to wait until one timeline. We can't get started after, but we can get started earlier. So if there's a synergy or certain policies make sense, we'll bundle them. And so I would imagine that's what we'll be doing with the suite related to looking at tenant protections, our tenant relocation ordinance, and making recommendations related to AB 1482. So those were two, A and B of that policy. It also looks at strengthening our penalty structure related to our tenant relocation ordinance, and then conducting outreach. So that's all work that'll be getting started this year. And it also is elaborated on within our AFFH policies.
Thank you for that. I'm really glad to hear that that you're considering bundling where it's appropriate and more efficient. I guess to put a pin on it, is the expectation from HCD that the stated policies are going to be implemented in that year? Is that, or we're slating to study them and consider them, pass them? Like, what is there a timeline for implementation specifically?
I think the key is we need to get started with the work and see what policy work, code amendments, and other related activities would be going into that. All right, now. So the goal is we'll get started. Ideally, we finish as much as we can within that year, but for something like this, I would see probably going into 2025 to get our work, and then depending on where council goes from there, we'll determine kind of how long it takes to get the work completed. It's important to note these are all floors, not ceilings. So I think our administrative approval threshold is a good example where we committed to raising that to 25 units for housing projects, but council directed us to look further, and so we're in the process of doing that. And I think it's similar for a lot of these. We start with what's our base level commitment, then we talk it through, provide more information, and depending on where council's at, we could move forward with that, or we could modify to meet the needs of where council wants to go.
Thank you. Okay, my last question is, when we're talking about the opportunity to bundle some of the policies, it gets me thinking about the community engagement strategy, and I was wondering, what are the, do we have a strategy that's been defined to keep community members engaged on across the themes of policy suites? Is there, if we're going through a bundled tenant protection community engagement process, right, for a policy review, will we be doing a mass community engagement sort of promotion to notify community that they should be stepping forward and actively participating in this suite of policy considerations? Because I think the reason why I'm asking this question is because I think that there's a lot of very important policies that are a lot of times are sort of fragmented across multiple meetings, multiple community engagement opportunities, and it's hard, it's hard to follow the thread. And I guess there's a part of me that doesn't want us to fumble at the finish line, right? That there are community members that have been engaged in this for years and want to stay engaged. And so are we thinking through the community engagement promotion strategies to ensure that, the bundled policies have their own sort of dedicated strategy?
Yes, we plan on doing robust outreach and engagement with all of these major efforts, and that's one of the front-end pieces we're working on with our teams now, is kind of looking at it comprehensively, both for the housing element and the general plan. Outreach and engagement in a thoughtful and comprehensive way was a key piece. So we're working on that right now, and that will be part of all of the policy pieces that we move forward, and making sure that we're putting this on the radar of all of the stakeholders that want to be engaged and providing opportunities for them to do so.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to see all of this come to fruition, and it's excellent work. I think it's a real testament to what we can accomplish when we work together, and there's a lot to be proud of in this plan, and I appreciate staff's efforts on this.
Thank you very much. Who would like to speak next? Councilmember Lorraine.
Thank you, through the mayor. I will try to get in the bundling spirit by bundling some of my questions, because I think they are somewhat related. Most of them are really just about timelines, of course, based on what we've looked at tonight. So I'm going to try this. With regard to the general plan and some of the actions and the terms that have been assigned to them, I think I'd like to ask Director Dahl if you could try to explain a little bit of the idea behind the current assignments, and whether or not there's a good likelihood perhaps or a reasonable possibility of changing. And I'll just list them. The land use 5.3, the El Camino Real corridor. Right now it's listed as a midterm, and I think we're going to talk in a future item today about that corridor, and how if Caltrans is thinking about potentially repaving El Camino in our area before 2030, perhaps this could be like a short term as opposed to midterm. So similarly, I think in general, I'm asking about midterm things that could be short-term, or long-term things that could be midterm, with an understanding that we can't do everything all the time. But similarly, Hillsdale Station area plan, if after the general plan's published, if Bohannon, as we understand, is thinking about developing before or up to 2030, that feels like maybe it should be more of a short-term instead of a midterm. And I'm going to have to say the bicycle master plan implementation, Circulation 4.9, and Circulation 4.10 paving coordination, both of these are currently long-term. And given that the bicycle master plan update came out in 2020, to me, long-term sounds like we might not complete until 15 years after the general plan is being adopted, i.e. like 24, getting into 2040 territory when we have a council priority to try and complete higher priority projects. So maybe I'll go with those. So El Camino Real corridor from at mid, could it be short? Hillsdale area plan, mid, could it be short? And bike master plan and paving, long, could it be mid? Thank you.
Yes, so I think the short answer to your question is yes. The implementation plan is a living document. It doesn't need to be amended. It's not like the general plan where you need to go through an amendment process. This is a living document that will be updated. We'll work on the exact structure we could see annually making sense, like maybe following council goal setting. And as there's changes in priorities, we would change an L to an M, or an M to an S, midterm, short term. So I think in general, yes, depending on council direction, there's definite latitude to make adjustments to these timelines. I think for the long term, for the bicycle master plan, that's reflecting that it's going to take a while to get all of that work done. That doesn't mean we're not starting until 10 years out. It means that it's envisioned to complete all of the projects in the bike master plan. It would likely take more than 10 years. And I mean, that's contingent on annual funding and other pieces. But right now, based on the list of projects, that's why that has an L. But it's also an in progress or routine, meaning it's ongoing. For the El Camino Real plan, most of that plan would be looking at basically curb backwards, so sidewalk and then private properties adjacent, and wouldn't necessarily be looking at the paved area. And even if it was, because it's a Caltrans right away, there's a lot that goes into changing curb lines or adjusting those pieces. So even if there was a prioritized planning effort and there was looking actual change to that curb to curb area, that would probably be a longer term process than the timeline for the repaving. But with that said, as we move forward and prioritize all of the updates to our plans, we envision more meaningful updates to some of them. And so there might be kind of parallel planning efforts. And so it's reflecting, we have a number of adopted plans that all will require some degree of attention. And it'll ultimately be up to council if you want to see one prioritized over another. But we've got the downtown area plan, the Hillsdale Station area plan, our rail corridor plan. So there's a number of them that will all need varying degrees of work. But if there's council interest in moving one sooner, there's definite room to make those adjustments.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other attempt at a bundled question for housing element stuff. And that would be, I think, just checking, maybe asking for a bit of explanation beyond what we have on dates chosen for two items. One is H1.12, which is encourage development of missing middle housing. Because it has a date of 2026, and I just think on reading the actions we have for that, particularly I think letter A, it seems like the primary action sounds like it could be part of rezoning in 25, but maybe you could explain. And then H5.3.1 is area plan for North Central North Shoreview near 101. Planning, and this date has 2029, which feels pretty close to the end of the cycle. And given that it appears to be meaningful for affirmatively furthering fair housing, I wanted to see if there might be a possibility of moving that date up.
Yeah, so I think with regard to your first question about the missing middle housing, definitely, as we undertake that comprehensive rezoning and zoning code update, we would be looking at that. And so if there's an opportunity to complete that in 2025, absolutely, I think we would do that. I think as our team gets into looking at synergies when we're doing one initiative, are there other initiatives that make a lot of sense to put with it? I could see a lot of relationship there. There might be a follow-up that we do in 26 that maybe is looking at a different piece that's analyzing something else. But yeah, if there is logic and we're already expending the resources, aligning it with that makes sense. For the planning effort, we're going to be looking closely at our AFFH plan comprehensively and probably adding a lot more details to kind of like what that planning effort would be. A piece of it is, say, the complete streets plan that's focused on North Central. So would be a component of implementing. So we need to look at that. And I would imagine we'll be developing that and reporting back to council in upcoming annual progress reports. And if there's direction from council to move that up and we can discuss what that would mean from a resource perspective, we could definitely do that.
Excellent, thank you. And I'll just make a comment that I appreciated that we're looking into the climate adaptation plan this year. And thank you for all your hard work. And those are my questions and comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Hedges.
As usual, Councilmember Lorraine has asked some good questions. Thank you, Councilmember Lorraine. I just have a couple of very simple questions. You talked about the overlay ordinance. I assume that's what the Planning Commission heard this last week?
We're talking about the by right housing overlay?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
And when is that coming to council? Do you have any idea?
We are looking at bringing it for public hearing at your next meeting on the 17th.
Okay. Sounds good. The other thing, we discussed the transportation demand management. we've had a policy for a long time. What is your view of how we're updating that policy?
I would probably defer to when that item comes before. I guess maybe if you have a more specific question on the TDM policy.
Well, is there going to be more requirements of employers?
So as part of that initiative, we're still going to be bringing it back for further council discussion and activity here in the near future on
Sounds
TDM.
good. Yeah, I paid attention to the TDMs all the way through when we started doing them. Thank you. I think that's it for now.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you to all my colleagues for the great questions. It leaves me with very few. Question I had, Zach, was I saw that we have Hillsdale Station listed on one of the action items. Do we have the other two train stations covered in an action item somewhere? And if so, I didn't see it, so just curious.
Well, so the downtown station is covered within the downtown area plan, and we do have our rail corridor plan, which covers both Hayward Park Station and the Hillsdale area station. So you actually have overlap where Hillsdale is covered in both of those. But I know our Hayward Park Station is covered within the rail corridor plan.
So could we either bundle the rail corridor together, or, I mean, why is there two then? I mean, I guess if you follow what I'm saying, like it would be, I would love to see Hayward Park not left out, I guess is where I'm going with it. And I think you guys have addressed everything else. Thank you. Great presentation.
Just one second. I guess my comments in general, number one, thank you to everyone here and not here who put this together. I spent all weekend long flipping back and forth between policies, and I can imagine there were a lot of debates, so thank you for that. My one question is, in the housing element, do the plans and the timing assume passage of the ballot initiative, or how does the ballot initiative affect the timing?
So we have a specific measure in the housing element, which is H1.20, that speaks to kind of the activities related to adoption of the general plan and bringing that measure-wide ballot initiative or ballot measure before the voters. And so that specific policy kind of encapsulates that, and then it does highlight a backup plan. If it is not, if an amendment to Measure Y is not passed by the voters, then it stipulates that would trigger the backup plan or the Plan B, which we would then have 6 months to come back to council to identify other changes and rezonings to achieve at least 1,700 units of additional capacity.
So if that were to happen, that would then have run-on effect and delay lots of other things that are already in the plan, because that 6 months of planning is not incorporated in your work effort right now.
It is not, so we would have to fit it in. That doesn't mean that we could necessarily stop on anything else, because I think that maintaining certification with the state is illustrating that we're able to make progress and achieve each of those implementation actions. So yeah, we would need to fold that in, but we would need to have a discussion about the implications and resources involved to get that done and how that might affect other initiatives the city's working on.
It could be outside of the housing element actions that got delayed. Okay, thank you. And I think my general comment is there is so much going on in the first couple of years that I would prefer, and you're smiling when I say that, you know that only too well, I would prefer, since staff has spent a lot of time on this, to say let's go with what has been recommended to us, and then we take a look at how it's going and how the plans and the estimates of the work, are they what actually happens, or is it something else? And then we give it 6 months, and then we look to if we need to amend, rather than talking about amending now. That would be my general comment. So, Councilmember Hedges, you had...
I just had one question that actually was Councilmember Newsom brought to mind. The Hayward Park area is pretty well built out. With the SARS approval of the 190 units at the train station parking lot, about the only thing we have left in that area to redevelop is the Amphlett site, and there are some vacant sites on the west side that could be redeveloped. So I guess what I'm asking you is, what are what are our general plans there, knowing that so much of it's already been developed?
I think the fact that you don't see a specific action related to Hayward Park Station is kind of for that point that a lot of those key opportunity sites already have adopted plans. But that's not to say that there's not ongoing work. And so I could see that discussion taking place when we come forward with updates to the rail corridor plan, looking closely. And at that point, if there's other specific actions, we could look at how to best fold those in. So I still see there being an opportunity for the discussion, but because there weren't the same opportunities as the other two station areas, that's why there's not a specific action. But there's still definite opportunity for discussion for planning around that station moving forward.
Yeah, we've had discussions between ourselves about the west side of the station. I know that one time one of the building trades people that has property there was looking at possibly redeveloping their property for housing. So there is some possibility on the west side, but not a lot.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are any other comments, then I think what I heard was that if there are opportunities to bundle like with like, and obviously to move things up faster and earlier, that would be fantastic, but let's take a look at what the real work is, and we would appreciate regular updates. Did I miss anything? Nope. Did you get what you needed?
I did. Thank you very much.
Okay, then thank you. We will then close out the special session, and we will take 10 minutes before we get going with the regular session. So about 7 minutes after 7. Okay, thank you, everyone.